Now I want to talk about the dreaded October lull. There's some hunting strategies for hunting the dreaded October lull, and there's some strategies for first knowing why the October lull even takes place. I have some articles out there. I think I even have a video where I talk about the myth of the October lull, that it's not a real phenomenon, but it is a real phenomenon when you think about it. Now, it's a myth, meaning that people think it's a condition, that just it's that time of year, that something's happening in the air, something's happening in the woods, something's happening with deer. They're going through this change, and that couldn't be further from the truth. The problem is very few people get to experience quality October lull hunting for a couple different factors. One, the October lull has a direct relation with when the bow season opens in your area. For example, North Dakota this last weekend. Dylan, the Breaking Point TV, Black Stamp Media, those guys that Dylan works with me, great video channel, YouTube channel, but those guys were out hunting in North Dakota, and that season started last Friday, I believe, and I'm just gonna throw a date out there. I think that was August 31st. So there's people in North Dakota that if they overpressure their lands, they're not gonna see many deer this weekend. They're not gonna be the same deer that were in this weekend. The first sit or two is your best chance, and they'll see their returns diminish, their opportunities diminish, the number of bucks on trail camera diminish, the number of sightings overall will diminish, because if you overhunt your land, if you overhunt food plots, whatever it might be, then you're gonna experience the October lull in early September in a state like that. Wisconsin, season opens September 14th this year. There's gonna be a lot of hunters experiencing the October lull on the week of September 16th. Because they overpressured their stands and land that weekend. Fast forward to October 1st, Michigan, Ohio, New York. So many hunters are gonna experience the October lull that first week of October because their season opens on October 1st. And this is something you can see it from state to state to state. One of the hardest pills to swallow is that we as hunters are doing something wrong. You know, it's kind of interesting. You can go to a Major League Baseball park and a professional hitter, a Tony Gwynn. We have Miguel Cabrera on the Tigers. Hitters that have had a proven track record for a long time, and you can go through a long list of those hitters. They hit at an extremely high level. And then you have AAA, AA, single A, and then you have all the college teams. We have the lacrosse loggers locally. They're college kids that come and they play during the ball. All those baseball players can be measured by their stats. They can be measured by their stats against other people in the same ballparks, in the same leagues. And you can get a pretty good idea who's a good hitter or not. Well, in the hunting world, everyone's a good hunter. Very few people say, you know, I'm not a good hunter, don't listen to me. It's almost like you look at the YouTube channels out there online, everyone's a professional hunter out there, I think, because that's what it looks like on TV and online. So we as hunters, myself included, we're very proud. We have a hard time admitting that we're not the best hunter in the woods, that we're making mistakes. And so the October lull and that concept that hunting pressure is what causes the October lull is a hard pill for some folks to swallow, but it's the best pill to swallow as a remedy for your hunting success going into this season. And that's the number one cause of the October lull is hunting pressure. So you could say that it's a myth, but it's not if you look at it that we do cause that. Another thing too, deer move, mature bucks move in completely different places in the summer versus the fall. Their habitat changes drastically. So if you look at summertime, they're feeding on beans, hay, maple leaves, briar tips, whatever it might be during the summertime. And then when they fast forward into the fall, completely different habitat change. Completely different cover needs. They can't smash their velvet through that thick cover that they prefer in the fall and winter that they also browse in during the summer. So once they turn hard antler, once the last cutting of hay takes place in your area, once the beans turn brown, bucks can make major whitetail shifts that I talked about in another video from summer habitat to fall habitat, and that is a very likely scenario while you're sitting there in early season saying, well, where did all the bucks go? Oh, it's the October lull. It's not the October lull. It's just that their habitat shifted, and I find that those bucks, by scouting summertime and then fall, winter habitats, talking to neighbors, driving around, I find those bucks move about a mile on average in a mixed ag area like this, let alone if they're in the UP of Michigan, northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, upstate New York, Pennsylvania, big woods of Kentucky. And in those cases, they're following the food sources. So on those big public land areas, they're shifting from their summer food sources, which there's a bountiful amount of food anywhere in the north half of the country for whitetails. There's usually 5 times more food they need. Your food plots don't matter. The neighbors' ag fields don't matter. There's just food everywhere. And so it doesn't matter if it's ag or food plot or summer forage, they are living high in the hog all summer long. But boy, it becomes very lean during the fall, and bucks will make major shifts in general to find that food, and then does will already be in that area where they can just shift a little bit and live their lives. Does have a much smaller home range than bucks. And so hunting pressure is applied. Summer food is shrinking drastically and very fast. And then it rolls into the fall food sources. That's why if you're on major public land holdings and you're looking for bucks on public land, follow the trends of the early white oak acorns falling early, red oak later. Greenbrier down in West Virginia, Southern Ohio, you get on those tops or those flats, if you combine a healthy greenbrier amount in stems per acre. Greenbriers, you can tell if they're in a wooded top, a tree that fell down, they might be 8 to 10 feet tall, 12 feet tall, and then we're out in the open, they're eaten down to the ground, and so you can really tell where those deer are. And so if you're following the acorns, if you're following the greenbrier, if you're following any kind of apple trees, if you're following clear cuts, especially 1 to 3 year old clear cuts, there's a bounty of green forage and woody browse all at the same time, where deer are feeding on almost year round. Those are all those places that those bucks move to, and where you should be hunting during October lull, whether your October lull is taking place in September or October. Another thing, if you own land, can you imagine they're feeding on woody browse in the bedding areas? They feed 5 times in a 24-hour period. So the first and second time in their bedding areas, that's feedings number 1 and 2 of the day. Feedings number 3, that's the hour before dark every single day. And that's that high quality green forage. So it doesn't matter if acorns are falling. It doesn't matter if your neighbors are pressuring the deer. It doesn't matter if there's a last cutting of hay or the beans are turning brown. If you have those high quality, diverse green food plot plantings on your property, think about all that stemmy, woody regeneration in acorns, even corn, is very hard to digest. And so the deer can't wait to hit your green forages on your food plots on private land. And again, if that extends to a clear cut on public land where you have green herbaceous growth mixed with woody browse, great combinations and explanations of where your bucks are moving to during the fall. So there's a lot of reasons for that lull to take place, but it has to do with bucks changing location, either hunter pressured, habitat related, or both. So if you have this on your private land and you have this out on the public land where you hunt, and you find these great spots where these deer are hitting during September and October, then how can that change? Through hunting pressure. So minimizing your hunting pressure, minimizing the number of sits per stand that you actually take in those early season sits, making sure that the sign and the trail cam photos, or just sign, or just tracks, are matching your hunting conditions. You're going into a stand with a high probability that if you're after a target buck during the October lull, it can take place if you've minimized hunting pressure in high quality food source and cover option movements in general. Now I'm going to leave you with one last reason that hunters in general talk about the October lull, talk about the September lull, October, whatever time frame that is. It's because you're hunting in the wrong locations. Well, people say, well, that's obvious. Some of the best stands out there, some of my most memorable stands, are my pre-rut morning stands, my primary rut, peak rut stands, my post-rut stands for that 3-week period where I'm hunting. And a lot of times those are completely different stands or cruising stands. Your public land big rut stands should be cruising stands, those stands you can hit every day on public land, because there's going to be a buck that's cruising by. That's the moment you can. You might spook one buck, but there might be another buck that comes by from a mile away if you're in a good location. So that's the one time on public land in a spot like that on a good cruising stand where time in the stand matters. But if you're managing small properties, you can't apply many sits to one stand location. I average about 2 or 3 per stand location. And bottom line, if I'm hunting in my best cruising, rut cruising, between bedding area stands, morning stands during the rut, during October, I'm going to experience the October lull in those stands just for the fact that it's not the rut yet and those bucks shouldn't be there. So think about that. A lot of these are very obvious. Obviously, hunting pressure affects deer, affects bucks. I don't think people realize how much they affect mature bucks. Just look at it like you get one chance in a mature buck per year. This is something to live by. And if you spook him, he's gone for the year. Really live by that. Over the years, I have gotten opportunities, second opportunities on bucks, but it's very, very rare. I could look at 35 to 40 of my target bucks that I've shot. I only got that first chance at them, and you either make it or break it. And if I have spooked them, messed up on them, then I haven't seen them the rest of the year. And if I did, it was at a distance or in the middle of the night. They can't take a lot of pressure. They react right away. They don't wait for you to intrude in their bedding area 4 or 5 times and they're gone. So you have to be hunting in the right location. Make sure you're hunting in an October, September feeding pattern. Maybe they're coming back to those beds on a long movement where you can slip around behind them 45 minutes an hour before dark and wait for them to come across the ag field a half-mile away into that spot in the morning in the early season. You're definitely hunting those green food sources, high quality food sources in September and October. You're not spooking those out, because not only do you spook out the food plot or the food source or the apple tree that you're hunting over, but you spook out the bedding area that he's coming from too. They relate to their afternoon food source every day. So if they're back there feeding on, food plots, ag fields right here, whatever it might be, and they're bedding 300 yards away and they're relating to that food source, why would they bed there still if they can't relate to this afternoon food source? They want to feed before dark. So this all of a sudden turns into their midnight feeding area, and people think they're just sitting back in a knoll somewhere waiting, but they're not. It's the hunter pressured location. So make sure you're feeding in the right location. Make sure you're hunting in the right location. Make sure your stand's in the right location. Make sure it's not a rutting location when it should be a feeding location. Make sure you're accounting for this might be summer habitat versus fall habitat. Those bucks move about a mile. And most of all, folks, whatever you can do, avoid applying too much hunting pressure. It should be very defined precision attacks and setups where you can get in and out without spooking deer. Just chip in, watch those deer. We have a mature buck that we're after, a 6-year-old. He's a split brow buck. We believe he's the one that has a dagger this year. He came in for the first time September 26th last year during the daylight. And he was in the daylight through early October. And he was in the daylight during the hunting season too. But if you keep your pressure low on your property and you're hunting the right food sources for the time of the year, you're staying out of your rut cruising stands, you're not playing all-day sits. An all-day sit is not appropriate for October, hardly ever. There's those occasions where you're going into an island, you can't get out, you're on public land, it's a small area, and you sit all day waiting, but very, very few all-day stands. There's very few rut stands that are all-day stands. That's another video, let alone September and October. You keep your pressure off, great food and cover movements, and hunt the right stands, and guess what? You won't experience the October lull. Even green food plots can withstand, they can take the pressure, they can make sure that you're not experiencing the October lull even when acorns are raining down in the woods, because deer want to get to those green food sources to help wash all those acorns down. And if you see that you're hunting and the number of bucks you're seeing is diminishing because of acorns, it's all because if you have food plots, they're either the wrong type of food or you're overpressuring the food plots, because bucks crave green when acorns are dropping. And I see that they hit food plots even stronger throughout October and going into the rut. And sometimes it levels off during the rut because those bucks are out chasing does all over the place. They take very little time to stop and feed. So is there an October lull? Sure. Do you have to experience it? No way. And think about that when going into the hunting season this year. You can control your October lull outcome for hunting mature bucks, big bucks, the oldest bucks in the neighborhood this season. And I hope this makes sense, because the October lull in the end is not a natural phenomenon. It is something that often we create and we can control with the habitat, cover, and food that we either hunt, find on public land, or plant or manage on our own lands this season. Try it. You don't need to experience the October lull. No hunter does.